Comrades, let us welcome back Comrade Aloun Assamba to the program to continue the discussion. Remember last week we were having this riveting discussion about life during the 18 years as a minister of government. And as you know, that Comrade Assamba was the Minister of Tourism. Tourism and Industry, Comrade Assamba?
At first, I was Minister of State.
Right.
Minister Philip Powell at the Ministry of Industry, Science and Technology.
Right.
And then when I became an MP, I was Minister of Industry and Tourism. And when Mr. Patterson retired and Comrade Portia Simpson Miller became the Prime Minister,
yes,
I became the Minister of Tourism, Entertainment and Culture.
Ah, beautiful.
And I think last week we spoke a little bit about it because her vision was that the culture was an important part of the tourism product.
Definitely. You know, it's so ironic that we had this talk because on Saturday we spoke to Comrade Ryan Simpson, who is the MP caretaker for Northeast St. Anne, where the Ocherios Craft Market is. And they're having problems right there, right now with the UDC, who...
Yes, remember I had mentioned...
Yes, I remembered the conversation we were having with you.
Yes, and they had the meeting, Comrade Simpson had the meeting with the craft vendors and exposed the conditions under which they were having to operate. And their tenants, they're freeloading, they're paying.
Exactly.
And I understand that they have had to paint their places. They have leaking roof. They've had to be using tarpaulin and so on to cover their products and all of that. It is very clear that the UDC has paid no attention to that particular venue for the vendors. And in Ocherios, I was having a conversation today with somebody about going along Orange Street earlier on this week, and all the shops there are Chinese owned.
Yes.
And you know what the person said to me? Like in Ocherios, how all the shops are Indian owned. And what has been happening is that transportation providers seem to have some special relationship. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
No, he spoke about it, He actually said it as well.
Right, because they bypass
the craft market.
Markets. And in Ocherios there is the one just as you come from when you come down and because that's a one-way going through Ocherios Main Street.
Right.
There is a craft market right there when you come down by the gas station and turn right before you get to the Scotia Bank. There's a craft market there.
Yes, I know that one.
Further down on the left is the main craft market, which is where I think Comrade Ryan went.
Yes.
And then there's another craft market, and I'm sorry I don't remember the names, but it's on the hill.
I know that one. Yeah, when you go in towards the bypass.
Right. The road links the bypass with Main Street.
Right, where the blue shops, where the blue shops are.
And when you go further down, there is another craft market which is almost empty now, across from Royal Plantation. In Ocherios. Comrade
Assamba, there is a viewer that says, Soap Factory by the Sea. She says she met you in England when you gave the speech on reparations, and she would like to give you a big box of natural soap as a thank you. So I'm going to put her on to you when we are finished. I'm going to reach out to her and send her your contact info because I think she is, I know she's on the North Coast.
Okay, fine.
Oh, she watched it on YouTube. She said she watched it on YouTube. But
thank you to the listener. As you mentioned about the reparations, I made that speech, and
Right.
It is one of the things that people put on their resume about debating at the Oxford Union. I remember as a young lady growing up, you would hear about persons who debated at the Oxford Union, and when I was asked to debate, I just, said, it's almost as if I could say, I have arrived. Then when they gave me the topic, which was Britain does owe reparations.
Yes.
No, let me tell you this. Now everybody talking about reparations, but when I made this speech, it was not a sexy topic.
I know.
It was not a topic that people wanted to even listen to or hear. And I had my co-debater was he used to be a deputy secretary general at the UN, and then he went back to India, an Indian, and he was a minister of government in India.
Okay.
And myself and a young gentleman from Oxford. And you know what was really funny? We never spoke to each other before the debates.
Okay.
We just got the topic and each of us spoke from our point of view. And we were not in competition with the presentation by the other speakers on our side. And we won it hands down. Because when you think about it, so many of the problems that we're having in Jamaica, and some of the problems they're having in India, is because of the colonization.
Yep.
It's because of the colonization. I mean, one of the speakers on the other side, and I'm not sure that this is where you wanted this conversation.
That's fine. Let's just go with the flow because you are hitting. I remember that the viewers requested your presence again.
Yes, thank you. And the other side made the point, which I rebutted, that said that Britain developed Jamaica, developed all the roads and so on. And I said they did it for their own benefit.
Exactly.
If you look at the country at the time when Britain was in charge of Jamaica before we became self-governing. So I'm talking about prior to
1962.
1950s, right? They only built roads to move their products to the places where their ships could take them out of the country and back to England.
Exactly.
So, for example, Bowden was developed in St. Thomas so that they could take out
banana, right? Banana boats.
Exactly. Here in St. Anne's Bay had a pier in St. Anne's Bay so that they could move things out of the mountains into here in St. Anne's Bay. And of course, the same thing in Kingston and so on. So they developed those areas of the country that was beneficial for them. And the other places, there was no development at all. In Southeast St. Anne, when I was campaigning to be the member of parliament, and I would go to places other than the main road, and there was a famous Money Tavern where people would stop on their way from Kingston to Falmouth and the North Coast. I mean, Falmouth can tell you the same kinds of stories. I wonder if we knew that Falmouth had the first running water in this side of the world. And
yes.
Come to Falmouth Pier to get water. And so our history is really showing, if we look back at our history, we will see the reason why there was any development at all. It all had to do with Britain taking out of the country and sending back to Britain.
That's right.
When I was High Commissioner, in fact, it gave me an opportunity to do that speech on reparations because Professor Palmer in Edinburgh, in Scotland, every time I went to Scotland, he would take me around and he would show me one of the things I learned is the plantations and so on, you kind of got the feeling that, everybody who made money out of this country were people who owned a plantation and owned many slaves and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Because slaves were considered to be chattels.
Right.
And your car and so on. Somebody could leave their will and leave one slave just to
yes, will the slave to a descendant.
Yes, so you had people who had one slave, and you had people who had five, and so they had something that they called factoring, where there were people in Jamaica now who would lease out the slaves to different plantations. You don't hear about this in history. When we study history, you don't hear about this.
That's true.
But it was an economy that was surrounding the business of managing slaves in the way how you manage cattle.
Yep.
Those kinds of things. I learned that because we hear about the payment that was made to the slave owners
on the abolition
of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about that. And then I saw it in action when Professor Palmer took me around. We would see houses and he would say, that house was built on the proceeds of 5 slaves.
Wow.
Or that house was built on the proceeds of 1 slave.
My God.
So you see, according to the kind of house that was built, how much that person had, how many slaves that person had inherited, and therefore how much money they got when the government of the UK paid the slave owners upon the abolition of slavery. Of course, the slaves got
nothing.
And one of our laws, which the way how everything links together, as a young lawyer, I did a particular case for somebody who was charged with loitering. I don't want to call the name of the person because I've not discussed it with him that I would speak about it.
Okay.
But he was charged with loitering. And in most of our criminal cases, it is the prosecution that has to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt the guilt of the person who has been charged.
Yeah.
Okay. In loitering, it's the other way around.
Oh, I didn't know that.
To prove what you are doing there. And that is one of the laws that was put in place after slavery was abolished to try and make sure that the slaves stayed on the plantations and that they did not go out. So if they were found in places where they were not supposed to be, they were charged with loitering and sent to prison.
So they were still under slavery, basically.
Why am I telling you that? As I traveled around this constituency, I remember one night I made a particular speech which had nothing to do with politics, but it had to do, and I started off by saying, slavery must have been a bitch. Now, I know that.
Yeah.
But that people to listen. And why do you think I said that? Because this community basically was carved out of the mountainside by the slaves who tried to get as far away from the plantations.
My God.
Yes. And all of that information helped me when I was giving that speech about reparations. And why is it that Britain owes us reparations? Owes the country. People talk about, if you give it to the government, what it's going to do. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for making sure that we have structures, education, what it is that we need for our people to thrive and prosper. The education, the health services, those kinds of things.
Yeah, development. Human development aspect.
Exactly. As I said, I don't know how we got into this, but this is where
it's a very important aspect of the discussion, though, and I'm happy. Big up yourself, Soap Factory, for bringing up the topic because it's very, very important.
Very important. And even more so now as we are discussing.
Exactly.
This whole thing about our constitution. And I want to say this because in this discussion, it might have been said and I haven't heard it. But you must recall that we didn't have a hand in creating our constitution, you know.
No, we adopted the constitution of our colonizers.
We were given a constitution. We were given a constitution. That is one thing. The second thing is Jamaica was the first country in the Caribbean that became independent.
Right.
Which means the other countries who became independent after us, they had something on which to determine what constitution they were going to get. So, for example, people have asked, why is it that Barbados was able, with an act of parliament,
without a referendum,
to change from being a monarchy to being a republic without having to have a constitution? And that is because they got the benefit
of learning from our mistakes.
That they were able to improve upon by the time it got around to their independence. So those are the kinds of things that our public education on this issue needs to be focused on.
Yeah.
We have a system which is a monarchy. The other thing I want to say is I hear people making statements about if we become a republic, if we no longer have the king as head of state, we won't be members of the Commonwealth.
That's
that
not true.
true.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth has 53 or so countries in it, and possibly only 13.
13, you are right. Only 13 that are still.
Only 13 as the monarch as head of state.
Yeah.
So while the Commonwealth had started out as being an organization to bring the newly independent former colonies together, that is not what it is now, because there are countries, for example, Mozambique,
right,
that was never a colony.
Exactly.
There are countries that are applying to be members of the Commonwealth that were never colonies.
I think Rwanda tried to apply it too.
Rwanda is a member of the Commonwealth.
And were they ever in British colonies?
No, they were not.
Yeah, they were colonized by France.
Yes.
There you go.
And so was Mozambique.
Okay.
So, Comrade Michael Manley used to say, mash down that lie.
Mash down. We have a lot of lies to mash down.
We have a lot of lies to mash down. So if we become a republic, it does not mean that we move away or we walk away from the Commonwealth. Other than the United Nations, the Commonwealth is the next largest grouping of countries.
Yeah.
The next largest grouping of countries. It's an important organization. And you will recall that last week when we spoke, and I talked about the development of the 10-year master plan for tourism development. It was done by the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And the Commonwealth provides technical assistance to the members of the Commonwealth. They don't simply say, oh, come here, Jamaica, I have a program to give you. We make representations to them and say, we would like you to develop a program for us. And they do that all over the world for other members of the Commonwealth. For example, the Commonwealth has a Commonwealth Observer Group that observe elections all over the Commonwealth.
Interesting.
Last year, just before my son died, I was in Zimbabwe as part of the Commonwealth.
I remember when you went.
Right, observing the elections that were held in Zimbabwe. It's something that they offer. And other Commonwealth countries pay for those observer groups to go to different Commonwealth countries to do that. So I want to mash down that line. That if we become a republic, we will no longer be a part of the Commonwealth. That is not so.
While you were you were a minister. What were the talks at the time where the CCJ is concerned? Because the CCJ would have just come into fruition while you were a minister.
Yes.
What was the mood at the time? What was Jamaica's stance? Because PNP was the government, and I think that they
we had expected and we had wanted to have the CCJ as our final court of appeal. In fact, I don't know how many people realize this, that for the last 20 years, we have been paying for the CCJ without the benefit of having it as our last
That's
court,
crazy.
as our court of last appeal. The CCJ for us, and we've heard about the Mary case.
Right, the Shanique Mary case.
Tannic Mary case. The Tannic Mary case had to do with
the original jurisdiction of the court.
The original jurisdiction that deals with the setting up of the CARICOM.
Right.
So that was an issue that related to CARICOM. And our national Tannic Mary was treated in a particular way by another CARICOM country, which was totally against the spirit of CARICOM.
Indeed.
So in that jurisdiction, we are part of the court. But we have been paying for the CCJ all these years. It causes me to wonder if we are not confident in our ability. And let me tell you, anybody who does any research can say or will say that the judgments that come out of the CCJ are on par with any judgment that comes out of the court of
this Privy Council.
Are on par with any judgment that comes out of the Privy Council. The CCJ is a well-run court with justices of the highest level of integrity and professionalism and experience, just like the law lords in the Privy Council. And they are our own.
Yeah. And you know, the irony of the situation is that I learned last night that the law lords are putting obstacles in the way of Jamaicans seeking appeal with this. Comrade Peter King explained it to me. Devoid of merit, which is a rule they're looking to implement on the 17th.
They're now attempting to put another layer in between our Court of Appeal and appeals to the Privy Council to look at whether there is any merit or not. Can you imagine?
That's crazy. So that is more expense.
Well, not only is it, but it
makes it harder.
Having your case thrown out without your having a say. You can't, you're not going to, it is not the hearing, you know.
I know, yeah.
You're not going to make the arguments. They will simply look at the papers that have been filed and determine whether there is a case to go forward or not.
It's madness.
So already they are putting strictures and boundaries upon our ability to appear in the court. And I mean, I don't want to talk about cost. Because that is another item. If you don't have the money, when you think of how many cases go to the Privy Council every year, only those companies and individuals who can afford to engage solicitors in England can appear in the court.
Indeed. But do you think that it has anything to do with the fact that they are quite aware that we are trying to become a republic? Do you think that has something to do with them wanting to put in this extra layer?
I don't know. I honestly can't answer that, and I don't know enough about the reasons why they've come up with this to be able to give an opinion on it. I honestly don't feel that law lords had made a statement about we should look to having our own court because we might wake up one day and find out that they have decided that they're hearing no more.
I remember that.
You remember that?
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes.
And we were quite enraged by it too.
Yes, we were quite enraged by it because for me that was an indication that we need to step away from this court because we could wake up one day and they say we're sorry, we're not hearing any more cases from Jamaica or from the Caribbean. They can do it.
Yeah, they can.
And you see, the other thing is that Britney's paying for them. Britney's paying them,
Yeah.
Not the lawyers, the judges.
The judges, right.
Britain, we don't have the Queen anymore. There's a whole different dispensation in the UK now. So many things are changing.
Exactly. And the thing about it, though, is it is in our constitution the right to appeal to the Privy Council. So it basically they're telling us that they don't really care about our constitution.
Well, if the Privy Council doesn't exist, what good is that right?
Exactly.
Meaning, if the Privy Council is not prepared to hear our case, what good is that right?
No good at all.
You understand?
Yes.
And that is not something that we have to have a referendum to change. That is something that we can always change.
Indeed.
Yesterday in the press conference.
Mm-hmm. I hear the Prime Minister today saying that he would like a referendum.
Listen to me. Why would somebody go for a referendum if the law does not require you to have a referendum? In our constitution, there are 3 levels of entrenchment.
Mm-hmm.
A referendum is the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because everybody, the adults who can vote, have a right to speak on that, on the matters that require the highest level of entrenchment.
Yeah.
There are some matters that can be changed by a simple vote in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
There are some matters that can be changed by numbers.
Right.
You understand? And then there's the referendum. So why would you want to have a referendum if you see a referendum is a tricky thing, you have to know how to put the question.
Yes, I know. I was listening to somebody speak about that today.
You have to know how to put the question. And then you have to have a lot of work. Did we speak about this last week?
No.
Where I recall in the 1970s, we had a constitutional reform commission. I remember the late Senator Paul, he used to live up in Bogwa at the end. The name will come. And the late Shirley Playfair worked in that commission.
Right, I remember Shirley Playfair.
Right. And the surname, he was a senator.
Okay.
They worked in the commission. And I remember the summer of 1977. They recruited law students from Cave Hill, because I was there at the time, to come and work with the Constitutional Reform Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And those law students went all over the country in small meetings, in church meetings, in schoolroom meetings, to talk about the Constitution, to talk about what it means, and to talk about how to change the Constitution. And that went on for years. If you talk to people who are in their 40s and their 50s, they can tell you about that period.
I remember.
Because when the government changed in the 1980s, Mr. Siaga disbanded that. And there was no further discussion about the Constitution until the PNP raised it again in the 1990s. And at the time, you asked earlier on about the discussion surrounding the CCJ.
Yeah.
We were part
Oh.
The government that was formed, that was at the time part of the discussions around the CCJ. And every time we tried to get this move, it was blocked by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Mr. Seaga was dead set against it.
Dead set against it. I understand that Mr. Golden, who later became the Prime Minister, had made some statement to the effect, let us see how the judgments go.
Right.
In 20 years, we have had enough time to see how the judgments go.
But Mr. Golding himself has said that.
Yes. He said that earlier on this week in some radio interview.
Yeah, I heard it on NNN.
Yeah, I don't understand why it is that we are hell-bent to moving into a republic and still want to appeal to the king in the Privy Council. I don't understand it. It makes no sense. Why move to a republic then if you still feel that the Englishman has to have the last say in what our law says?
They're only doing it because Barbados did it and it looked cool. The people of Jamaica.
But Barbados do it because Barbados only needed to do an act of parliament to change.
But also Barbados has removed the Privy Council long time, years before.
Yes, years before.
Yeah.
So, that is something that we did a lot of work on. What we haven't spoken about, and I don't know if you have had this discussion, about the opening up of the telecommunications industry.
No, we haven't had the discussion as yet.
I can speak
sure.
generally about it.
Mm-hmm.
I did saw a Facebook post the other day in which I put one of those old, it was a picture of a telephone booth outside of the telephone.
Yeah, I remember those days.
And asked people if they remember the line up out there to get a
the phone booth, the ICAS code.
And then after that, you have to get an ICAS code for your own
personal
phone
use
at your house. The ICAS code had about 15 or 20
numbers. Yeah. And if you miss one, you have to start again from scratch.
Start all over again. Right?
Yep.
So that's where we're coming from. Let me tell you something. When we moved from Money to go to Kingston in 1968, it took us nearly 10 years before we could get a telephone in our house.
Yeah.
And even in those days, do anybody remember the party line?
Yep. I remember the party line. People come in on your call.
People just pick up their phone in their house and they could
hear your conversation.
and this was up until in the early 1990s.
Early 90s. I remember that. I remember the party line.
I was still living in Kingston, and I remember a man coming to my yard one day and saying to me if I knew that my helper spent the whole day on the phone. And I asked him how he know that, and he says, because I am your party line and I cannot get to use my phone. No, but it's true.
I know, I remember because I became friends with one little boy that was in Hope Pastures and was my party line. Because every time I take up the phone to call my friends, I would hear him on the phone. Until me and the little boy, I remember him name, Andre, we became friends because of it, so I know what you're talking about. I ended up becoming friends with my party line person.
Because you did not
Nature girl is saying I sound like I was born ages ago. Well, I was born long enough to remember party line. I'm a child of the 70s, nature girl. In the 90s, yes. Because when I started high school, we still had the home line and we still had the party line. Because I think it freed up in the late 90s.
Yes, and then we had with Philip Paulwell as the Minister of Energy pushing
That time they were TOJ.
Telecommunications
of Jamaica. Mm-hmm.
To break that monopoly so as to be able to bring in other kinds of telecommunications.
Mm-hmm. I remember quite well.
All of that work was done in the 18 years when nothing happened.
Exactly, according to them.
The people who now take the phone, you know, there's this joke that our good friend Minister Roger Clark.
Hello, the two phone them.
One phone in one ear and call yourself on the other phone, because now you could make two calls.
Exactly.
But it was a joke, but it was a very
serious joke.
Let me tell you this. I moved back out here in St. Anne in 1999, around that. There was no telephone out here. And I made representations until we got something that was called a fixed cellular. It was the most expensive way of communicating.
Okay.
And you had a fixed cellular because you had to have some way. Now we've been moving. And you couldn't get a home phone out here. You had a fixed cellular. I remember they had a what you call it? The tower up in Earl's Mountain. And guess what? Hurricane Ivan came and took out the tower.
That was 2004.
And they did not put back the tower. Which meant you couldn't have a phone out here.
Interesting.
Let me tell you. And we moved from that to a point where I am going to tell you the story, because this is where we got to. Digicel came in and started putting towers all over. And some of us had two phones. You had a cable and wireless phone. I had a Digicel phone. And depending on where in the country you were, you get the service. And that is why you had to have two phones.
Right.
I remember going up to a place, to a funeral. I can call the name of the place. It's called Swamp.
Where?
It's called Swamp. It's the lower end of Prickly Pole.
Okay, Prickly Pole. Yes.
Call it Prickly Pole.
Yeah, man, I know Prickly Pole.
That's a one way in, one way out, and you had no cellular service there. And I went to a funeral, and I could not leave because the people had parked on the road, which was so narrow that there was no way to leave, even after the funeral finished, because you had to wait until people got to their car in order to leave. But I had a meeting in Golden Grove, and I could not reach the meeting. When I reached Golden Grove, which is Lidford, it was so late that the people had gone, and there was no way I could have sent them a message to say I couldn't come because I'm stuck in Prickly Pole. Now, another story is that I went to another place, and they asked me something, and I wanted to call to see if I could get the answer. And they had to take me to a particular spot in the community
to call.
And you have to line up yourself along a particular line in order to get the service.
Oh my God, I remember those days.
We have moved from that. In fact, when that happened, I remember calling the head of Digicel and telling him that story and how the people are begging. One man even said, you can put up the tower on my land. Because the people here need to get the telephone working. And so that whole the rolling out of the telephone system that we take for granted now was done in the 18 years, and people said nothing happened.
Yep.
I want to also speak about the Highway 2000.
Mm-hmm.
All of the work was done during that period to build Highway 2000. I remember when Highway 2000 was opened, it was called the upstairs, downstairs road. You remember that?
I do remember it being called that.
We had never in Jamaica had a flyover.
True. I remember.
And it was called upstairs, downstairs road. That road was built in that 18 years.
Definitely. And we got a fight for it too. Because CMC Aga said we didn't need that road because Jamaica too small for highway.
You know about the north to south highway.
Yeah.
Which I will tell you, comrades who are listening, and if there are any labor rights who are listening, I have to drive on that highway to go to Kingston, and I will never call it by the name.
Me neither.
It is called, I call it the north-south highway, because we got a fight for that.
A big fight.
That is a road that was developed during that period.
Mm-hmm.
That period when they say nothing happened.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to talk about, because I've passed there this week, is the transport center in Halfway Tree.
Yes.
Anybody remember what Halfway Tree used to look like?
I do. The congestion.
The congestion in Halfway Tree until that transport center was built.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it was opened by Mike Henry. And I will tell you that the day when Mike Henry talked about my transport center, if you cut me, you would not see a drop of blood in me.
Oh my God, Mike Henry. I remember that because everybody did. But in all fairness, though, people cuss him for it. They get a fine tracing for that.
But of course, because he had nothing to do with the building of the transport center.
But they complained about it too, bitterly, when it was being constructed. I remember them complaining about it, saying that it was too big, it was a waste of money, and it would make the congestion worse. That's what they said. I remember.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Every bit of development that took place under the PNP in that, what they call those 18 years when nothing took place, they complained about it as it was being done.
And then when they tried to copy, because when they came in power in 2007, they decided that they were going to put up a transport center. And they built the failure of a transport center that is out by Water Lane, where it hardly anybody use.
Nobody uses it.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to go down there.
And we did advise them about that it was a poor location. And I think it was Audley Shaw at the time dismissed us.
Up to now, when you pass there,
because
you have to pass there if you are going into downtown. I don't know if now that somebody has put a gas station.
Right across from there. Mm-hmm.
If it means that people will drive there, I don't know. But that place has not been used at all since it was built.
Waste of resources. Total waste of resources.
But you know, that's not the only place where you see the resources wasting, eh?
Definitely.
You see wasting all over. So I wanted to, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the World Cup cricket.
Yes.
That was held in just before the change
of the government. Yeah.
Yes, the World Cup.
2007, early 2007.
Right, that was held at Savannah Park. That had the whole world focused on Jamaica.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is the building of the National Indoor Complex.
Mm-hmm.
And that sports complex there allowed us to host the World Netball Championship. You remember that?
Yes, I remember. I worked at that tournament.
Right, so that sports thrived during that period. It is during that period that our Olympic athletes got the opportunity to thrive because of the support. Oh, as I'm talking about that, we have to talk about the Chase Fund.
Yes.
That was put in, the National Health Fund.
But before you even go there, we also hosted the World Junior Champs in 2002, Kingston 2002.
Yes.
I think that's the only time we have ever hosted any international event, and that was in Kingston 2002, and it was quite a success.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of talking the things as they come to my mind. In the cabinet, the development of the National Health Fund.
Yes.
John June was instrumental in developing the National Health Fund,
mm-hmm.
was the Minister of Health. So many people are benefiting from the National Health Fund now, including me.
Yeah.
Because I now have high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I get my medication at an extremely reduced price.
Richard McIntyre is reminding us that Edward Seaga in 2002 had said that Jamaica couldn't host so many people.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. And the Chase Fund.
Yes, the Chase Fund, that's big.
In that year, in those years, the Chase Fund. Look how many people, notwithstanding the fact that we have the National Health Fund, there are persons who still need to go to the Chase Fund because of their particular illness.
Especially when it's really, really bad and the NHF can't help enough.
Mortality by the National Health Fund. Yes. So those are the things that we take for granted. I wonder now what it is that, for example, Chase is doing. I don't hear much about Chase.
Boy, Chase is like, I've tried to petition to assist some of my patients to access the Chase Fund to no success. Because it's like pulling teeth now.
Yeah. And probably we need to find out what it is that the Chase Fund now actually does. The development of the convention center in Montego Bay.
That's another big ticket item.
It's another big ticket item which was developed under the People's National Party government in those 18 years.
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about the development that took place in those years. Because what I have seen in terms of the blueprint that was left, you see, and there's a lot to be said for it, because government is about continuity.
Indeed.
You understand? So you put the plans together, and if the government changes, then those plans are supposed to be there, that whoever comes on will take it on and move with it. So you can actually see those projects that this government got into Jamaica House and reap the benefit from those plans that were laid during the 18 years.
But you can tell exactly when the plans ran. They exhausted the plans, because literally after that there was nothing for them to do.
You can see it, and you can see how some of those things are some of the things that are being done now have not benefited from the kinds of plans that were put in place during those years. Let me talk about the work done on the expansion of our port.
Yes, the logistics hub.
The logistics of the port. The port of Kingston, all of the work that was done to expand the port was done during those 2 years. The other thing I want to talk about is the establishment of a BPO sector.
Yes.
That we now take for granted, and that now employs so many of our young people. Now, I'm not saying that it is the best sector to work in.
No, but it's better than being unemployed.
But the basis for the development of the BPO sector took place in those 18 years. I remember when I was Minister of State, I went to open a new BPO sector in the Montego Bay Freeport area.
That's the first one to come, Sutherland.
No, that is before Sutherland.
Okay.
This again, I don't want to call the person's name because I did not discuss it with him.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
Patrick Castley.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
This is before I became an MP, so this is in
early 90s.
2001. In 2001.
I remember those days.
Yeah. Sutherland came long after.
Okay.
So the things that we now take for granted are things that were put in place in those 18 years. But I say that good governance requires that we do everything and lay the groundwork so that whoever is there will carry it on. And I said it the last time and I'm saying it again. Losing an election has
consequences.
And I want comrades to hear that and to remember that. Because some of the things that we see happening now, I never dreamed. And I sat in the cabinet. I sat at the highest level of governance in this country. And I know that some of the things that I see happening now could never have happened in those 18 years. Could never.
No.
I give you a personal experience. I was Minister of Tourism. Always had my hair short. And I always had streaks in my hair.
Right.
But I decided one day I was going to go blonde.
I remember.
Remember that?
Yep.
And it's called the Assamba blonde.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm telling you this is that I did it on the weekend. And the Monday morning, I made sure to get to cabinet early. And I made sure that I had something to discuss with the Prime Minister before cabinet started. Because I wanted him to see that I had done this to my hair. And we discussed what it is that I had planned to speak to him about. And when we were through, I got up to leave. And I turned back and I said to him, you know, sir, I don't understand you. He said, what? I said, you have not said anything about my hair. And he said, but if it didn't look good, I would tell you. But why did you expect me to say anything? And I said to him, because you're my boss, and if you told me that it was not appropriate, I would do something about it. I would change. I had a similar conversation about something else when Portia Simpson Miller was Prime Minister. Because if I had done something that they didn't approve of, and it was brought to my attention, I would have dealt with it.
Right.
Saying that to say that I operated in a cabinet where we had a Prime Minister. And we operated as a team. We operated as a team. It is not everybody. You don't have to be friends and visiting everybody's yard.
Yeah.
But operating as a team.
Work together.
You work together. Because the whole purpose of it was to make sure that we did the best for the country. I remember I was going to a Caribbean Tourism Organization meeting, CTO, meeting in Bahamas. I don't remember what was happening. And, you know, you have to get permission from cabinet to travel. At least in those days,
yes,
you had to do a cabinet submission that says what it was you were going to go to do, who were the technical people who were joining you, and how much it was going to cost. And cabinet had to approve it before you could go. So I don't understand situations where ministers have gone off, and you sometimes hear that Prime Minister don't know, or
that don't make no sense at all.
But in this particular meeting in the Bahamas that I had already received cabinet approval for, I don't remember what was happening in Jamaica at the time. And Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller said to me, "Aloun, you know you can't go. You can't leave." And I said, "Okay, ma'am." And I didn't go. And at the time I was a deputy chair or deputy president of the CTO. I had to send my apologies.
Was there a specific reason why you couldn't go?
I'm saying I don't remember exactly what it was that was happening here in Jamaica, but whatever
something was happening.
Something was happening. I just said you can't go.
Okay.
And you just know you don't argue about that.
Right.
The Prime Minister say you can't go. That is it.
That is it.
You can't go. So I've tried to touch. I can't not talk about our status on international affairs.
Oh yes, that's a very, very important topic. Very, very important.
Affairs. And I start by talking about my own experience when I was in the UK as the High Commissioner to what is formally called the Court of St. James.
Okay.
And I was also ambassador to a number of European countries.
Oh.
The good thing about that is that I was based in London, but we had very good honorary councils in those other countries.
So you were actually ambassador to several European countries while you were High Commissioner?
Yes, I was ambassador to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Cyprus, and Ireland.
I have no idea.
As well, I was ambassador to all those countries, in addition to being High Commissioner to the UK and the involvement in the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth being on the board of governors for the Commonwealth. And every discussion that was taking place, people would either call me beforehand and ask me what was Jamaica's position, or we would be in the meeting and I would keep quiet and I would listen to what people have to say, and somebody would say, "So what does Jamaica have to say about this?" Because they listened to us and took their cues many times from what we had to say. And I'll tell you this, in my time as High Commissioner, this now we're talking about 2012 to 2016, A.J. Nicholson was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I could take up the phone at any time and call my minister to get advice on something if I needed more information than my officers in London could give me. And sometimes I would call, because London is 5-6 hours ahead.
Right.
And if I call, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, he answers the phone and he says, "I know it's only High Commissioner Assamba would call me at this time."
Yeah.
And very clear instructions. There was no vacillating. There was no taking this position this time and taking another position another time. You knew, and other people knew where Jamaica stood on certain issues.
Yeah.
We were leaders in the anti-apartheid movement.
Definitely.
And others took their line from us. We have always held a very firm position with respect to our relationship with Cuba.
Yeah.
Jamaica was one of the first countries that recognized China.
Yes.
Others took their cue from us. We negotiated, this is another thing, we negotiated that agreement with Venezuela for
Petrocaribe
for getting oil at a
discounted cost.
Well, I was going to say at a lower what the rest of the world was getting it for. We have squandered that because we have not remembered who are our friends. And please forgive me if I raise this one particular thing. About that whole kerfuffle about the Secretary General.
Yeah, you need to speak about that. I would love to hear your point of view.
My perspective is that the Commonwealth Secretary General holds the position for 4 years initially and can have another 4-year term. There is an agreement, and usually in foreign affairs matter, there are some protocols that people adhere to. So there are different regions of the world, and the Secretary General of the Commonwealth moves around in different regions. Right? So the last time the Secretary General was an Indian, and there was an agreement that the Secretary General who followed that would be from the Caribbean. Yes. And so there were names put forward about who should come from the Caribbean. We didn't put forward anybody at the time. And everybody lined up behind the current Secretary General,
Baroness Scotland,
who was born in Dominica, and although she's Baroness Scotland, is a Caribbean woman.
Yes, she is.
And we because you have to lobby to get others to vote for her. And she won. I remember we were in Sri Lanka when that occurred. So she's in the position for 4 years. And then 2 years in her second term, we put forward a contest at a time when it was understood that the next Secretary General would come from Africa. The next Secretary General would come from Africa. CARICOM had a discussion about supporting
Africa.
When the time came. So you had a situation where a Secretary General had served 6 years out of a possible
8 years term.
Now, to put in a new Secretary General at that point, do you now start to run another 8 years?
Exactly.
Does it mean that Africa has to wait, instead of waiting another 2 years, has to wait another 8 years? And anybody looking at it, it don't matter what people say to you in front of you, you know. Diplomacy means look behind the veil.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter. It didn't matter at the time what we said. Jamaica was hell-bent on putting forward a candidate where there was
no need at all.
There was no vacancy because the current Secretary General still had another 2 years in her second term of 4 years.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, foreign affairs has to operate on principle. It's not emotion. It's not emotion. It is
opportunism is not opportunism, it's principle.
What is the principle here? I would hate to think that we allowed other persons to convince us to put ourselves out there for their personal reasons, not ours, you know. What is our personal reason?
We have no reason at all. I don't even think we understood what we were doing.
I don't believe so. And then, what is it? Yes, it is good to say the Secretary General is from Jamaica. But what does it bring to us? The Secretary General cannot treat Jamaica with any preferential treatment to other members of the Commonwealth. Because that is not how the work is done. So yes, I hear people say, oh, it is a great honor to have a Jamaican as the Secretary General.
They're not examining the principle.
There is no benefit that will come to Jamaica commendable to all the other countries by our having the person there as Secretary General. So that in itself caused us, and then you hear, when I ask questions, you hear who and who from Africa, the SAC has said that they would support. And what I say,
they say it, but that don't mean they're going to do it.
I don't even know if they said it, because you can say something and not say it.
Yeah.
But I don't see Africa saying, "Oh, we are going to give this up." It's not going to be for 2 years. It's going to be for another 4-year term, at least. 2 years to finish one term.
So they'd have to wait at least 4 years instead of 2 years.
So that is that. The other thing is our absence when important votes are being taken in important places.
Mm-hmm.
We choose to be absent.
Or we have no position. That's to me, it's more than just being absent. It's like, I get the impression that we have no foreign affairs. We don't have any policy. We don't have any policy direction at all. It's like they just go wherever the wind blows. Like even with this Palestine issue, before they almost came right out, and they did come out and support Israel. But then when they realized that the world was siding with Palestine, they changed the tune. They do a total 180-degree switch.
So you sometimes wonder, what is the basis that these decisions are taken? And I am not being personal about this.
Mm-hmm.
I can only say these things because I have worked in the area, and other persons who have worked in the area have said pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we know how decisions are made. And when I talk about calling Minister A.J. Nicholson, it's not because I don't know what Jamaica's position is, but sometimes there are some little technicalities that I want to get straight in my own head,
mm-hmm.
so that when I open my mouth and talk, I understand the principles more. So I knock heads and get further and better particulars, as they say.
Indeed.
The other thing that I don't know if you've spoken about this, but when we became, and this is not the 18 years now, this is that other period.
Right.
2012 to 2016. When Jamaica was the equivalent of a pariah.
Oh, yes.
In international circles as it related to finance.
Because hardly failed the 10 IMF testing.
When the IMF and the World Bank would not speak to us at all.
Yeah.
When Minister Peter Phillips, who was then the Minister of Finance, had to go and smooth the ruffled feathers.
Yeah.
To go and smooth things out to get back on those programs. So I'm not saying, that the IMF and the World Bank are the best things since sliced bread. But there are the things that we have to work with.
Yes, if you have, you take time, draw your hand out, lion mouth.
There are the things that we have to work with. And make sure that we were able to undo some of the bad blood that existed between Jamaica and the international financiers.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Given your experience in foreign relations, what do you think now of the current impasse between the diaspora, members of the diaspora, and the government? In that you have members of the diaspora planning protests, you have members of the government and government apologists who are actually verbally attacking these members of the diaspora.
Let me say this. Having been High Commissioner and ambassador, I worked very closely with the diaspora, but it was never the PNP's position to take over the operations of the diaspora.
Indeed.
There were the organizations that existed were advisory, and there was no government representative. The government did not name people to those positions. You remember, it was the People's National Party in 2004 that had the first diaspora conference.
Oh, I didn't know that. So the first diaspora conference was in 2004. Comrades, I hope you're listening.
And it was held at the Jamaica Conference Center.
Okay.
What you need to understand, is that people pay their own way to come to these conferences, And that conference was the first time when a government was opening up to its diaspora and talking to the diaspora about the developments that were taking place, about the plans that the government had. There were some people at that point that raised the issue of should diaspora members vote. I recall that was not something that took place. No, it was not. And there's good reason for that. At the time, there was no organization. In fact, if you look at it, there are probably more people who live in the diaspora than
definitely.
Jamaica.
Definitely.
Because, everywhere we go, there are Jamaicans.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there is no role for the diaspora to play.
Exactly.
And the role cannot be simply sending money back home to Jamaica. That is not the rule. Our diaspora members all have skills which they have honed, both here in Jamaica and abroad. And they want to have a say. Having a say don't necessarily mean that you have to be in parliament, because look how many people in Jamaica, and there's only 63 people in parliament.
That's right.
But this country runs on the voluntary work that is done by thousands and thousands of Jamaicans.
Yeah.
And the diaspora can do the same thing. So we want to be able to hear what they're saying. We want to listen to them. And we cannot be fighting, we can't be seen to be fighting the diaspora when they simply want to see the country progress. Exactly. I don't think that there's any person who is active in any diaspora grouping in any part of the world whose objective is something other than seeing the country progress. During that time, the government set up what is called the National Education Trust, NET. I wonder how many people know about NET.
I don't, not even me.
NET, I don't think NET still operates, but NET was an organization that helped diaspora members and groups to make contributions to the education system.
Interesting.
Yes, because if you made your contribution to a school through NET, you could say, I'm sending you 100 computers, but I want to go to let me say money primary.
Right.
But organize that and you wouldn't pay the customs duty and all of those things. It made life so much easier
to get them there.
To do work. And that's what they want. They want to contribute. But they don't want to have to go and fight with customs
to pay. And that's what they're facing now. So that's why I know that this National Education Trust probably more than likely no longer exists, because we've had a lot of complaints from the diaspora members in the recent years who have been trying to make contributions and have been frustrated.
For example, in the UK, there's a group that sent ambulance.
Yes.
I went to the blood bank, for example, and they had sent an ambulance that was like a mobile blood
bank
collection center. Not an ambulance, but you know what I mean.
Right.
A vehicle. So there are groups that come from parishes that fundraise for their hospital, for Lucy, for Princess Margaret. And they want to do work. Most of them are not interested in any political footing.
Exactly.
They just want it to be easier for them to contribute, whether with their skill or otherwise. And the government of Jamaica cannot, this is my personal view now, cannot seek to control the diaspora groups.
Right.
The diaspora can come together and do their own advisory boards, because in my time the diaspora group decided who was on their diaspora advisory board. The government was never involved in naming people on an advisory board.
I've never heard of that.
It happens now, though.
Yeah.
It was never about politics, eh? It was never about politics. So that is my view.
Well, these people are all about politics now. Everything is about politics now.
I do not think that most of the people in diaspora are interested in positions in parliament. I don't think so. I think they want to help. They want to work.
Yeah. Indeed. Why? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to raise, because I was Minister of Culture, Entertainment and Culture.
Right.
One of the things that when I became minister, we had tried to do, we had a program through the Jamaica Exporters Association with a US funded program, looking at and we have a very active spokesperson, Deborah,
right,
on culture and the orange economy, which is the economy of entertainment and culture.
Right.
To my mind, that is an area that we need to be going forward as a country. We need to develop and give support.
Definitely.
Need to develop and give support, because if you look at those countries that are successful in film, for example, Hollywood, everybody knows about. Bollywood.
Right. India. Nigeria, no, Nollywood.
Nollywood. You know, most countries are building their film industry.
Yep. You just have to watch Netflix, you know. You just have to go on Netflix and realize that US no longer dominates the film industry.
Exactly. You see subtitles because they're Italian or they're French.
Korea, no. South Korea.
Oh, no, I forgot about the Korean. There's some good movies that come out of Korea. So our move going forward is to look at the orange economy.
Yes.
To beef up the Ministry of Culture. The Ministry of Culture is not just about JCDC, excellent. I don't know how much work is now being done in unearthing, developing, and showcasing. That's the mandate of the JCDC.
Yes.
Unearthing, developing, and showcasing our culture. It cannot be that lip service is given and we only deal with the JCDC around Independence Time. That is just one aspect of the work that the Jamaica Culture Commission is supposed to be doing. I must admit that I was on the board of the JCDC for many, many years. And before I became minister, I was deputy chairman of the JCDC. So I do have a lot of information about what is to be done with the JCDC. Some of our innovation, the use of breadfruit, for example, the use of our locally grown produce that would come up through the culinary
Yes.
development, the culinary competitions. Of course, everybody know about the dance and the music and but poetry and literature. How many people know about the poets and literature that come out of the JCDC? How many people know about the artists that come out of the JCDC? And the fact that the National Gallery every year put on a number of missions of Jamaican local artists.
Yeah.
I had some friends visiting this week, and I took them downtown to look at the artwork.
Okay.
That is beginning to be developing.
Right.
And it's without any, I'm sorry to say, developed without any support from government.
Yeah.
We need to support more of our orange economy, the culture and the entertainment. We need entertainment spaces. Let me give you an example. Last week there was a play put on out here on that strip by just outside of St. Anne's Bay.
Okay.
The play was actually put on in what is a construction site.
Wow.
And tonight I learned that over 300 people were there.
Interesting. I didn't know about that.
We don't have enough exhibition space. We don't have enough performance space. And I'm not talking about stage shows.
A lot of them closed down during COVID, and the buildings where they like the playhouses. A lot of them closed during COVID, and then the spaces were lost.
Yes, exactly. We need to look back at the development of performance spaces. We need to support. Yes, we support the big things. We support the big shows that thousands and thousands of people go to. We support Carnival.
Yeah.
But we need to give support
to the small man too.
To the smaller activities. We need to find a way. I know that the private sector look at how much of their products they can sell. I mean, if I was in the private sector, I would look to that too. But you can work to develop something. Look at where let me use Calabash, for example. Look at how Calabash started. A little
poetry reading, yeah?
Poetry reading festival down on the South Coast. Look at what it has become.
Yeah, international. Angelina Jolie was there last year.
Look here. You think you can get any space to stay down in that side of the
I know.
Next year,
I tried.
Okay.
I tried 1 year and I had to give it up because Auntie Dorothy wasn't here.
Well, let me tell you this. A group of friends of mine that I do some things with out here. We do social as well as community involvement, and we want to go to Calabash in May 2024. We put on with deposit already.
Wow.
Already. And if we ever put down that money by the by the end of April, we wouldn't get the place.
When is Calabash?
I think it's May 2025.
May 2025.
And 1 year before Calabash, we have had to make our deposit.
May 2025, and you've made your deposit already.
Yes.
So it's not even for this year, it's for next year.
Sorry?
So it's not for this year, it's for next year.
No, it's next year. It's next year.
Wow.
You just have to say, okay,
wow.
$28,000. Put this down. Next year, I find the other $28,000.
Interesting.
So I'm saying to you that you can imagine that is one small. Look at what it does for the community. Look at what Calabash does for the community.
Exactly.
Look at what it does. You can imagine if we had this somewhere else.
But we see the government on a push to basically discourage locals from having these indigenous shows. Like, for instance, Protege had a show the other day and the police shut it off by 1 o'clock. We see it happen to Popcorn, Unruly Fest. Basically, anything that's reggae dancehall, which is indigenous to Jamaica, we see a deliberate push against it by the government.
Well, that is something that's going to have to change.
Yeah.
Because every one of those shows attract people from foreign.
Just look at Rebel Salute.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, it is now getting sponsorship, but I know when Tony first started.
In St. Elizabeth.
I know when Tony first started. I'm very pleased to say that I was one of the first persons who spoke at his launch.
Yeah.
And gave support.
Yeah.
Sometimes to remind him.
Yes.
But that's the thing on him. but the truth is, I want to tell a story.
Sure.
About, and this is probably, I have a story for everything, But I remember when I was Minister of Entertainment and Culture, and that dancer was killed. What was his name again? It will come to me.
Mm-hmm. Bogle.
Bogle.
Mm-hmm.
Bogle.
Yeah.
Killing of Bogle killed entertainment in Kingston.
Yeah.
For weeks.
Yeah.
Because everybody was afraid of retaliation.
Yep.
And I recall we had something called the Entertainment Advisory Board. At the time, I think that was also something that we set up. No, not I think. It was also something that was set up by the Entertainment Advisory Board.
Okay. Somebody asked. All right, I see somebody. Gary, I'm going to open the box now, which is 9:30, and have some of you ask Comrade Assamba the question. So, Comrade Assamba, I know it's late for you, but just beg you 15 minutes more. Some of the viewers want to ask some questions. So those of you who have questions, send in your requests from now to come up into the box so that I can bring you on. All right. So Gary, let me send you an invite. Anybody who has questions? Not seeing anybody yet, so nobody don't have no.
Let me tell you this story because.
Yeah, man, go ahead. Go ahead.
What I want to say is that up until then, we took these dances and parties that were being held. They had Wednesday and they had that name.
Ready every night. Yeah, man, you had ready. You had Pasa.
Right, and I remember even going out to the Yam place down in Clarendon on the way to Mandeville.
Yes.
The shows down there. And when the things closed down in after Bogle's death, people came to me quietly and said, Minister, it's only you can get it home again. I said, but what is the problem? The problem was when the dance don't keep, taxi man don't make no money.
Yeah, they don't make any money.
Nail people don't make no money. Hairdressers don't make no money. Dressmakers don't make no money. The cane man don't make no money. The
soup man, soupy, the jerk chicken. Yeah.
Those people weren't making money. And I had to have an intervention. No. Between the two sides,
Oh boy.
Poor stupid me.
But to this day, people don't even realize Bogle was a real impact. His death was a real impact on the industry.
Yep. Yes, because if you remember, this whole thing about the creation of the dance hall dance.
Right.
He's the one who brought that to the fore,
Yep. So Gary, this question is, if the PNP wins the next general election, will they get the Trelawney Stadium back in action?
Well, that is something that I think has got to be put on the table. something that has to be put on the table. I don't know that I am competent to answer that question, but that's something that we will have to put on the table.
Okay. Hugh Blair is asking if you are prepared to be a part of the next government when PNP wins.
Let me tell you this. I'm prepared to do anything that will help with the development of this country. However, I also understand that there are other people who are coming up who need a chance. I got my chance.
Right.
So I'm not going to fight out anybody for a position. I'm not about positions. The people who know me know that I never want position yet.
I think you'd be a great advisor. You'd be an amazing advisor in many different capacities.
I don't have to have a position, but I will always be a part of a PNP government.
Sure, yeah. Nobody wants to come in the box? Go ahead, Comrade Assamba.
Yeah, so I quietly had a meeting. And I didn't realize that entertainers don't come early to anything.
No, man, 2 o'clock in the morning.
So I had one group coming at one time and another coming an hour, 2 hours later. And the first group come late.
Oh boy.
So the other group was going to meet them up in the building and they were not speaking to one another. In fact, it was really bad and I don't want to go into all of that right now. I want to go into the solution.
Right.
And so the first group came and I had them in one of our boardrooms. And I had get my close protection officers
right.
and my secretaries to go downstairs to meet with the other group and move them up onto the 4th floor into another boardroom. And as the minister, I ran between the boardroom, the second floor boardroom, and the 4th floor.
Jeez, yeah. You had to live. You had to be carrying message.
Yeah, I was the mediator.
Oh,
and we were able to get things calmed down and settled down. And I'm not going to call the names of the people who were involved at the time, but we were able to get it done so that the business of entertainment could start again in Kingston.
Yeah.
And so that ordinary people could begin to earn money again.
Yeah.
And this is probably, Kamala, I must tell you this, that this is the first time that I'm speaking about this. But there are people who were part of the entertainment board, and in order to show my good faith, I had to agree that I would read a lesson at Bob's funeral.
Okay, because I know that we took a lot of flack for that at the time.
Yes, and I was in Barbados because we were interviewing for a new Secretary General of the CTO, and I had to make sure that I came back here and I drove straight from the airport to the funeral. And yes, I took a lot of flack, but
it was necessary. Yeah, I remember. I remember how the labor rights made a big deal of it. How you gone to gunman funeral because even though it was a dance, I remember everything.
It's not overkill himself, you know.
I know.
Why were they going on about my reading a lesson at Bogle's funeral?
I remember.
But we couldn't speak about it, because I had to speak about it.
Yeah. Somebody says to tell you that this is Flora Dwyer says to tell you that she loved you from she was growing up, and she's now 44. She's from Northwest Manchester.
Oh Lord, you're telling me how old I am. I'm not that old. But thank you very much, Miss Gloria. Thank you.
Flora, yes.
Appreciate it. Flora, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Somebody, all right, we have one person who want to ask you a question. Somebody come in. All right, this is Comrade Patrick. All right. Go ahead, Smith. It's coming up into the...
It's a Tekel Smith.
Yes, Tekel, yes.
Comrade Assamba, you know, they have ready for years, right? Hello?
Repeat
again. Tekel Smith. I take man, I use Patrick Pierre now, to the politics, right? It's me, Comrade Atekel Smith.
Atekel Smith.
Yes.
I'm Patrick Pierre now. We always talk, Comrade Assamba. My question to you is this, right? Now, we have in East Portland, wherein the party is leading, right? But the candidate that we have, the JLP candidate beat him. What do you think the best thing for us to do with that?
You're asking me a question that I don't feel that I have
No. I shouldn't call the party. I shouldn't even say that. Let's put it a different way. Let's say we did there's a poll out where the PNP is leading in this particular constituency, right? But the Labourite MP is beating our candidate. You understand me, Kamla?
Yeah, but I don't think that Comrade Assamba is in the position to answer that.
No. Answer the question. What if, one question, no, I'm getting to the question now. What if the party was come to you and say, listen, we're part over there saying, no, you can't go help me? Would you come?
Oh, you want to know if they call you to help, if you would go?
I would.
She said she would.
Kamla, we'll talk about it. I saw my man, I take man. The same Patrick Pierre, we always talk, right?
Yeah, man, I know it's you, Atekel. I know it's you.
No, you know, right? I know it's you. I know you know it's me.
Yes, the question was asked the last week when we talked, and you said anywhere the PNP needs you, you are willing to go. I remember.
Yeah. I need to get a number off you again. Here, Kamla.
All right, Atekel, take care of yourself.
All right, cool. Assamba, respect.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there's somebody else. Sydney Blake. All right. Comrade Sydney Blake.
Comrade, Kamla, comrade Assamba, what's up?
We're good.
Yeah, man, we join. Later I'll come in after I work and join us, so I'll listen to some of the talk. So, what definitely the topic tonight?
Okay.
What definitely the topic?
Yes, we're finishing up now. We finish. You're coming at the tail end because we're just taking a few questions.
Okay.
Because Comrade Assamba has to sign off now. So you have a question for her?
No, well, let me say, I'm long to see her because she next door nearby, no, because me Northwest. When time she used to run over there, so she used to run over. So we can just drive across. So I'm glad to see her for a long time. I don't see her from she left out. I don't see her, so I'm glad to see her. She look nice, see me all right, you know. PNP as usual. PNP can't go down, no matter where you go. Big up yourself, Comrade Assamba. Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Okay, Sydney. Oh, you worked in Northwest?
Yes.
I was on the stage in Bamboo.
Yes.
Okay.
I was that time of the night. I had to go to Kingston because I had to go and vote. That time my vote was in Kingston. And
Okay.
I had to go and vote. And also I was working at the headquarters too, so I had to go back to Kingston. I also worked in Southwest that year when what's his name? Who's now the candidate again?
Keith Base Odyssey. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I walk around and introduce Keith to communities in Southwest, and I remember we go there, they said, come on, that's you don't send it for there. I said, no. Come with Keith Walford is your candidate.
Yeah.
I was prepared to introduce him as your candidate. So I was
yes, man. Yeah, man. Glad to see you. And with the other time,
all right, Comrade Sydney Blake.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
All right. Take it easy. We talk again.
All
yeah,
right.
Man. Good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Comrade Assamba, I know that is way past your normal hours. Yeah, man. So I want to thank you again for complete.
It was very good as usual.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I hope that I was able to dispel some of the dishonest statements that are out there, and that I've given comrades some ammunition that they can use.
Definitely.
When people talking about nothing happening in the
18 years.
18 years, yes.
Well, comrades, I see few of you had questions, so that means Comrade Assamba answered most of what you wanted to hear. All right. So thank you again, Comrade Assamba. Take care. All right.
Okay.
Blessings. Bye-bye.